Hello, Pixel Pyro here, and I've been looking around the internet, and I've seen a lot of really great intro tutorials to Cinema 4D. What I'm not seeing a lot of is intermediate modeling techniques for real-world objects. And this is really helpful for package design, or if you're going to do an innovation on a product and you want to be able to model something that you want to see in the real world. Maybe it's for 3D printing or to just do a really nice looking mock-up of something. And one thing I'm looking at right now next to me is my Tervis Tumbler that I use every morning for coffee and water. One of the cool things about Tervis Tumblers is you can get them custom branded with whatever you want. But in order to do that, you need to be able to show them what you want. So I'm going to use spline techniques and some intermediate modeling to create a Tervis Tumbler. And hopefully you can use this to create your own product innovations, or maybe your own kind of new type of Tervis Tumbler itself. And today we're going to use Lathe NURBS to use splines to create the basic shape of the Tervis Tumbler. So the first thing we're going to do is go into one of the two-dimensional views and start with a spline. So I'm going to do, for this kind of thing, I like using Bezier spline because you get control over the handles of each point. So we're just going to start at the very bottom of the cup right here. And then right here, and then right here, and do the inside of the cup as well. So it'll end up being a volume shape. It'll have volume and not just be two-dimensional. And then end it right here. And this is obviously a very basic shape at the moment. You can go through later and add some more of the detail, like the ribs that are inside of the cup. And also use chamfer vertex to make these edges more rounded, but not by doing a type of soft spline right here, soft interpolation. You do that, you get this, and that ends up being, I don't know, it's not exactly what you want. So I'll show you how to use chamfer to get really nice rounded edges. Let's go back to hard interpolation. Okay, so we have the basic spline, and we don't connect it because, as you'll see with lathe, it rotates the spline around in a circle, and this is where you want the connection to be so that this volume stays around the whole profile. So we'll just do right here, lathe. If you hold down Alt, if you have the spline selected, it'll automatically drop the spline inside the lathe. So right now you've got a very basic cup model. And right now you can see there's some intersections going on in there because the 2 points weren't exactly at 0 on the y-axis, or I'm sorry, the x and the z-axis. So you can go into front, select the spline, and can make sure that it's at 0. Now you can do it by the eye. It never really works because it's not perfectly exact. The best way to do it for this kind of thing, to make sure it's exactly at 0, is to go into the structure tab right here. And as you can see, the point that's selected is highlighted right here. And I am 0.047 centimeters off of 0, and that's going to make intersections in the model. So the best way to do that is to just highlight that, double click, hit 0, enter. Same with this point, not exactly at 0. You see it's highlighted right here. So I'm just going to make this 0 on the x and 0 on the y as well, so it's exactly at the origin. Now if we go back to 3D, you can see there's no intersections anymore. If I was to drag this around, this point, that's when things start freaking out. So going into structure and making sure it's at 0 coordinates is a really useful way to know that you have the right settings for the very beginning of the origin for your cup. So right now it's very basic, and that's fine. We're going to go in here. I'm going to make this exactly at 0 as well, or pretty close to it. So if I highlight this point and I right click, right down here you have chamfer, which takes one point, and if you just click and drag, you can see it creates a nice rounded edge for that spline. It also includes handles, which we can come back to later if you want to make this more refined. I personally don't mess with the handles because they're usually pretty well done automatically to be rounded. So I'm going to do this one too. Right click, chamfer, and then click and drag. Just like that. Maybe a little bit higher. That's fine for now. Okay, so looking at the Tervis, the inside cup is actually, it's kind of more rounded, smaller inside the volume. And this is where you can start. I can bring this up, and then I'm going to have to mess with the handles just a little bit. More of a rounded edge. Okay, cool. And now we can do the chamfer on the edge right here too. On the actual Tervis Tumbler, these are both rounded. Okay, like that. Maybe a little bit like that. Okay, and then proportionally, this should be a little bit taller. That seems pretty good. One thing I'm going to do too, looking at the way the curvature is on the Tervis, I'm going to add a point. If you right click and do create point, I'm going to add a point right here. I want to make this, see if you just bring it out, it's a hard interpolation, it's linear. So I can bring that out, right click, and do Satz interpolation. And it does a nice bend. Obviously that's too much, but you can just give it a little bit like that. It's a cool trick with splines and the move, scale, and rotate tools. So instead of trying to drag these handles out by myself and eyeing it, I could just scale up the point and the handles go with it. And so the curve itself is a lot more gradual. That seems pretty good. Okay, so as you can see, let's go back to this. It's still a little bit squatty. I'm going to go to object mode, lathe, and I'll just scale this up like that instead. Instead of trying to go back through the spline points to stretch it out by itself, I can just go into object mode on the lathe object itself and scale that up. And that scales the splines as well. Cool thing about starting at the origin for this spline, that is where the axis center is for the lathe object, which will end up being really useful instead of the axis center being in the middle somewhere, maybe like off here. Having it be right in the origin at the very bottom ends up being really useful later. Okay, so do that. Now, as you can see, it's got that really awesome jagged polygon type edges to it, which nobody likes. That's an easy fix if you go into lathe. You can see right here in subdivision, There's 24 subdivisions going on right now. And also if you go into display, go and do row shading with lines, you'll be able to see the lines that are going on here. So if I could go in and just increase this to be, pretty high. Because why not? That's what makes products look realistic. So that's getting there. I'm going to turn that back down for now, just until we get more detail put in. And so we have that. Now there's another thing that Tervis does. There are some ribs on the inside cup. And so we're just going to have to go through and create points. I'm going to turn the lathe off right now and just get back to the profile itself. So I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different ribs. So we're going to do that. And just like this. Just going to eye it for now. You can go back and refine the distribution later. And there are ways to do it automatically, but personally for me, I enjoy doing it by the eye. I think it makes you a better modeler. Okay, so I'm just going to go down, make a small rib, like this. This one too. Okay, it's pretty rough right now. Bring this up. Bring this one up. Okay, that's okay right now. But there is the problem of it's going too far now into the main cup. So I'm going to bring these out. So this kind of comes up a little bit. It's getting there. And these are hard interpolation points right now. So you can just go in and highlight all of these. Right click, soft. Doesn't do a whole lot, but it's going to add realism to the overall shape. So turn my lathe back on. And as you can see, there's some nice ridges going on here. And we can go back and later when we add a transparent material to see how that ends up looking versus the real object. And the transparent material is going to help too later to put the VT logo in there, or whatever you'd like. That'll be the part that will be the really fun section to kind of make it your own Tervis Tumbler. So it's getting there. This middle line is a little bit annoying. That's kind of giving it a hard edge right here. That actually comes down to when you select the spline object, intermediate points right here is always set to adaptive at 5 degrees, and that usually gets the job done. But for stuff like this, when you have gradual edges and gradual curves, I always like to do uniform, and then you can set the actual number of intermediate points in that spline. Intermediate points means the points in between the ones that you've personally created. So it's kind of, you're setting up how the spline is being interpreted between the points that you set up. And for stuff like this, obviously it adds a lot of geometry, which is nice. That for me gets to be a lot more even, a lot more of a really nice, even model of an object. And that also lends itself to not having to up the subdivisions as much because everything is already uniform based on the spline intermediate points. And that's getting to be a pretty nice model now where it's very even. One of the principles of modeling is to use a lot of, whenever you can, use quadrangles, have it be 4-point polygon as opposed to triangles or n-gons, and anything past 4 points on a face. That's when you start getting into, just kind of messy modeling. And so this is what you always kind of strive for, is just very even and very even 4-point polygons. Okay, so that's getting pretty good. I'm going to turn this back down to 24 just for now. It could actually end up being 48, I think, would be the only, maybe a little bit more than that. But for now, I'm going to go back to 24. And it's starting to come along. I'm liking that curve. I think the ribs right now are working out. We'll see how they turn out when we make a transparent object. And right now for me, this is a good Tervis Tumbler cup. Let's focus on the actual top of a Tervis Tumbler. So I'm going to turn this off right now and hide it. Okay, so as you can see on the top of the cup, there's a little bit of advanced stuff going on underneath, especially that lip of where the top sticks on to the top of the cup. I'm going to focus on just the general shape right now. Okay, so let's do another spline. I'll do linear this time. Well, that is a mess, but it's good to just get it roughed in. The bottom of that top is just a little bit complicated. It's not too bad. I just like to rough it in like that and then go through and just really refine everything. Part of this too that's nice is I could just stick it on a lathe right now just to see how it looks as a top, and then go through adding points, refining points. Actually, I'm going to do that. So it's not too bad right now. It's obviously not proportional, which is fine. We can turn on the cup again and make it all fit together in a little bit. One of the things first is to take all of these points back to this. Take all these points and stretch them out. So this is helpful when you have all the views put together to see how it ends up looking. So I'm going to stretch this out some more. I'll go ahead and turn this cup back on. Stick it up there. Turning the lathe off right now just so I can get the right fit for this cup. Of course, I can chamfer this in a little bit and get those really nice looking edges, rounded edges. This is actually, let's see. This needs to go right here. This goes right here. There's a really fine, very fine lip right here. This is the point where clients fall asleep, or you put some really nice music on, get into some podcasting, because it's very, I think it's like maybe 60% brain power, 50% brain power, just kind of pushing points around, mimicking real life. It's a really great time to a little bit zone out, get into some music or podcasting, turn me off. That's fine. You can just watch me work. I'm probably going to end up pausing this video for your own good, because you can see what the process is. It's just going to be a lot of mimicking what's going on. That's kind of the interesting part about 3D that I like, is once you get into modeling and understanding how shapes are broken down, I start looking at the world in a way different way. Just really into, I see like one of those metal tube bike racks, and it's like, okay, well that's just a spline with a sweep NURBS on it. Or here's a column, that's just a cylinder with booleans involved, capsule booleans maybe, if you want to get real crazy. I think it's fun. It's a cool thing, I think. And you can get way into music by that point too. I'm gonna make this one exactly at 0. I'm gonna make this one exactly at 0. And that way when I turn lathe back on, there won't be any intersections. And that's pretty close. That's pretty close to what that actual top looks like. At least without the mouthpiece. There's a couple things going on with, there's a little rise on this top lip that supports the mouthpiece we can do in a second. That's gonna have to be after we get rid of the Lathe NURBS object and make that actual thing editable as a polygon object. So that's getting there. This is obviously a little bit too tall, which this ends up being correct as well. It is a little bit lower than the outside lip. Sweet. Okay, I'll do a little bit of just some chamfers on this, just to give it a little bit of realism. It's a little bit of a hard edge. Doesn't need to be a huge chamfer. These ones up here. That's a good chamfer. The thing about chamfer is if you click and drag and then release the click and then do it again, you chamfer those points too, which can be good or bad. I try and keep my chamfering low. Okay, so that's getting there. I'm gonna go back to the spline, uniform intermediate points. I'm just gonna do 4 because there's a lot of points going on. And that is looking a little bit like a Tervis Tumbler. So in the next one, I'm going to do materials, we'll do some fine modeling on the top itself, and we'll get along with some texturing too for that branded section in the middle of the cup. Okay, thanks, bye.